Cross Season 2 Episode 4 Review. Operation WTF. Gothic Romance. And Too Many Plots. By author Jasmine Blue, and the light shall lead the way. But being the light comes at a cost on Cross Season 2 Episode 4, and Lou's had quite the whirlwind romance that resulted in tragedy. Cross and Kayla are closing in, but Bobby Trey may have made a discovery that changes everything. When I spoke about this season of Cross before, I mentioned that it's ambitious, and this hour certainly exemplifies that, just not necessarily in the best way. Right now, Cross is juggling the better part of 3 or 4 plots, and not all of them are working as cohesively with the others as they should. Our primary case is the hunt for Luz, figuring out who is behind the death of one billionaire and the threats against another, Lance. But even the Lance angle comes with its complications. Focusing on the two-prong issues of a vigilante going after him and just why he has someone coming after him is a hefty enough order. It's also what is monopolizing most of Cross time, as it should. But when we get into spinning secondary cases like the entire side quest with Samson and LaDonna, and they were teasing this massive mastermind conspiracy, it gets a bit crowded. One of the issues too, so far, is that Cross and Samson are one of the most compelling duos on air. They re-partners, best friends, and brothers. It's also rare to see a strong, healthy black male dynamic on screen. Those are like damn unicorns. But thus far, believe it or not, halfway through the season, there's such a limit on Cross and Samson, the show's strongest dynamic. John is basically sidelined to a B or C level plot revolving around his mother, and because we don't even have enough time to dig into it in the first place or properly incorporate other characters, it's hard to actually invest. I don't know LaDonna, and just short of not wanting to see a woman go to prison for a murder she did to commit, I don't care about her this case, or whatever it potentially means as far as reconnecting with John. I love John, and the prospect of him getting his own storyline was exciting. But this specific one is T, and it's even worse that he can't exactly lean on Alex during this either. The mastermind plot and this huge conspiracy are a bit of a head-scratcher that leaves us trying to piece together what it really entails, and just what Kayla was up to that involves shadowy figures and experimentation. What is interesting about this arc is that it gives us Bobby Trey doing what he does best. He's a man for hire. For the right price, he'll take on any job, and we get to see the seedier angles of what he brings to the table with both his experience as a cop and that of a stone-cold criminal. It's believable that Bobby Trey is that guy who has connections everywhere. I loved him, happily slurping up soup at a restaurant one minute, and then introducing us to the underground tech world in the next. And I especially loved his quote about his silent companion. It could be more apt. A lot of folks confuse does speak with can't he understand. That is a dangerous calculation. We've been wondering just what Kayla has been involved in, and now we have footage of her in a lab, interviewing an injured soldier. Whatever experimentation took place under Operation Bad Religion placed soldiers in the hands of the government and likely led to further injuries and death. What the entire hell was that footage? It was so freaking horrific, my blood ran cold. When we spoke with Johnny Ray Gill about the season, he mentioned the Tuskegee Airmen experiment that had our own government injecting black soldiers with syphilis, experimenting on them, and watching them die. The mere idea that Cross could be referencing something like that is heavy enough, powerful, but that Kayla could have been part of it in any regard is enough to make your blood boil. So, are we to believe that all of this business with a dirty, untraceable weapon and Kayla's background in the forces under some secret assignment is really her being behind the deaths of US soldiers as part of some government experiment? Kayla is already a polarizing enough character on her own, but if that's really what's happening, there really is no coming back from that. It could explain why she wouldn't want Cross anywhere near that, as he's the most morally sound person who probably knows. And given whatever is brewing between them, he'd never look at her the same again and want to bring her to justice for her sins. But what's crazy about all of this is that even Bobby Trey has his limits and moral lines, and based on how he was looking at that video footage, I don't see him simply going along with helping Kayla. Is there more to this story, though? That's the big question. Whatever the case, if people weren't fond of her hooking up with Cross before, then that certainly is changing now. I still can quite make sense of whatever is going on between those two. The good news is that it does seem like Kayla wants anything serious, and that's a relief for so many reasons. But what's bizarre about Alex is how he has directed all of his attention to her as if he can entertain the idea of being with someone unless it's serious. He gets so weirdly moon-eyed with Kayla now that it feels jarring, especially for a man who is still hung up on Elle what's likely been mere days ago. I've always been indifferent to Elle and Cross as a pairing, while still recognizing what they offered at large, and why the romance works so well. Cross and Kayla aren't exactly compelling though, and it results in 2 frustrating points for Cross. It means his home life doesn't get as much focus, which is what we had with Elle, Nana, and the kids. And it's obviously frustrating because of the John element. And no, I'm not just referencing the fact that Kayla was sleeping with him during Cross Season 1, but it almost feels like the 2 of them hooking up is compensation for not getting as much Cross John, but it is But they do work well enough with this case, and this hour had them finally realizing that the person they were looking for is a woman. They figured out that Ramos, aka Lincoln, aka Esteban, aka Gustavo, is their primary suspect. He merely worships at the altar of Luz. Now, a romance that did manage to be compelling in its own right was that between Luz and Gustavo. He was enamored by her from the moment he laid eyes on her. Seeing her as the heroine of a larger story he was happy to be merely a small part in. They ironically aligned with what they envisioned for Luz. They spoke about how she represents Xochitl, La Niña de las Flores, and they shared this connection, that of justice, vengeance, and a deep connection to their roots. Interestingly, Gustavo sees Luz as his light and a warrior to be worshipped, whereas Luz sees herself merely as a weapon. What I'd love to know is whether this mission is all hers, or whether her aunt influences in ways we don't realize. She reminds Luz frequently of her mission, and the word she said, but just knowing that Luz seems to feel she was essentially raised to do this, makes me wonder whether this mission goes far beyond her own feelings. Did her aunt turn Luz into a weapon? Exploit a grieving young girl and fashion her into this warrior to exact revenge? How much of this is Luz? And how much is it other forces? Because she was happiest with Gustavo. It was a Gothic type of romance that thrived. Until it did teat. Nothing comes ahead of the mission, which her aunt and Donnie reminded her of, and Gustavo did bring the feds to her multiple times. He was a liability. There was no getting around that, but it was sad to see him sacrifice himself all the same. But where does that leave Luz now? Over to you, Cross Fanatics. No account? Register here, forgot password, enjoyed this review? Help us out. Drop a comment or share it. It's free, painless, and helps keep independent TV coverage alive. The Ghoul keeps saving Lucy in Fallout Season 2 for a brutal reason. Her worst betrayals look a lot like his own old wounds. Malcolm and Grace have a perfect date on It's Not Like That Season 1 Episode 5, while the Soto and Jeffrey's kids face conflicts. The Pit Cross, It's Not Like That. Some characters offered complexity and intrigue, and that's why they were our characters of the week. Fallout Season 2 shocks with Phase 2, Barbara's Colorado Mystery, and the Enclave's Secret Experiment. Chaos reigns in the Mojave Wasteland. The first trailer for Scarpetta is out, and it brings Patricia Cornwell's beloved characters to life for the first time. TV Fanatic is searching for passionate contributors to share their voices across various article types. Think you have what it takes to be a fanatic? Click here for more information and next steps. Posted unpublished. February 18th, 2026. Jasmine Blue is a former senior staff writer and recent editor for TV Fanatic. She is an insomniac who spends late nights, early mornings, binge-watching way too many shows and binge-drinking way too much tea. Her eclectic taste translates to her viewing habits, making her quite more categories reviews.